If I was concerned about my mental health and I went to a professional, I would want them simply to just accept me as a trans person, even though they might not know too much about it. I think it's more important that they're just happy to listen to you.
I immediately look for an empathetic face, an empathetic answer, and I look for somebody that's not judging me by what they see in front of them, rather than, or even my history necessarily, as to what's going on right now for me. If I get an unsympathetic response, which is what I'm used to off of other professional organisations, I just clam up and I don't want to know, and I don't ever want to go back to that place again, because I can't see the point, because they're not seeing me as a person, they're just seeing me as another number on their CHI sheet, and why should I bother with them if they're not going to bother with me?
The times I've asked for help, I can really go back to when I had to go to the doctors to tell them how I felt, and my doctor was so laid back, it was like I was telling him I had the flu. But in saying that, he admitted that he'd already helped somebody like myself to go through and start a journey, and it so relaxed me, because I think I've spoken to you before, it was like standing under a shower and thinking, oh, at least somebody's believing me now. But as I say, that night when I walked in, and it was like, in fact, he stunned me that night, because he says to me, how far do you want to go? And I thought, what does he mean? Because at the end of the day, he explained to me the different things that you can get done to yourself. But I just wanted to feel me.
I think when I first started working with trans clients in the trans community, I was very aware of what I didn't know about them, and I felt like I had to work quite hard to try and fill in the gaps of the knowledge that I didn't have. And I think as I've worked more and more with trans people, it's turned around, and I now have to work quite hard to remember that I don't know their story. What I've been really struck by is just how different for each of them the process has been, how different what it means to each of them. And I guess what's important for us to remember is that everybody has a unique relationship with their gender. Whether or not we think of ourselves as male, female or something else, there's quite a unique relationship there. And that's one of the challenges, I think, is trying to really be as close to the client's relationship with their gender as possible.
I think if you end up making assumptions about somebody and those assumptions aren't correct, then in some way there's a barrier between you and that individual. And people can end up going away thinking about their sexuality and thinking, well, I'm a trans, or I'm a gay, or I'm a straight, or I'm a bisexual, or but not having a place to explain that.
I first became a support worker, and I didn't know he was trans at the time. You know, somebody so young as well, it just seemed like a huge thing for them to go through. But, you know, listening to them, very quickly on I learned that the person I was supporting really knew what they wanted for themselves and what would make them, you know, make them the best person they wanted to be, to live the life they actually wanted. So I learned to trust the person on that. But sometimes they would have doubts, and they needed to talk about that. And I think it was one of the important things, I think, was to kind of give that time and space to talk about it without saying, well, if you think like that, you probably shouldn't transition, you probably aren't really trans. But that, you know, I think everybody has doubts to do anything difficult or make a big decision. There was rocky times for them, and they needed some support more than others, but they often weren't anything to do with being trans. They were to do with the same things that everyone else has to do with, like ups and downs in life, difficult relationships, and this person being young. Some of them were just to do with growing up.
There's been many times I haven't asked for help when I've been struggling. I can quite honestly say last year I had a terrible, terrible year for mental health difficulties, and it took me a long time to ask for help because I was scared that they would shove it all onto my transition, and it would somehow stop me from getting surgery that I so desperately need. It would all be lumped in together rather than looking at, as I said before, the individual problem that was going on right then, right there, rather than, oh, this has all got to do with you being transgendered.
If a person has mental health difficulties and are transsexual, I think it's quite important not to keep almost harping on about the medical condition. My wish is just to get on with life as a normal woman, and therefore, you know, I don't really want to be reminded constantly about it. I just want it to be something. It's something that's there, but it doesn't need to be brought up all the time.
What I hear from folk is the trans part of their lives is often the really positive, the really good bit of their lives, the bit that they feel proud about, the bit that they've spent time, you know, years sometimes working on and coming to a resolution that they feel really happy with. It's about their identity not being validated and what they feel and how positive they are about that, not being celebrated and valued. There's also something around not expecting that individual, a client, a patient, a service user, not expecting them to teach you everything that you need to know, because you need to go away and do your own learning and research and speak to other peers and other professionals if you don't know, and not be scared to do that.
What happened a lot when I first came out, and it was in the workplace, a lot of it would be people would come up to me and say, "Hi Jan," and I would go, "Hiya," and the next minute they would say, "Oh, I didn't have a problem with you," and I would go and I'd just say to them, "Well, I'm really sorry, but I didn't have a problem with you," and they would step back, and the first thing was, "But I'm straight," and I would walk towards them and go, "Well, funny, so am I."
I've had people saying to me, you know, "Where's your girlfriend?" And, you know, "Have you got a girlfriend yet?" etc, etc. And I'm like, "No, actually I'm gay." And then you get the question, "If you like men, why are you becoming one?" And it's like, then you feel like banging your head against a brick wall, because you have to kind of say to them, "No, I've always been male, it's just the fact that I'm in the wrong body." So you have to go right back to the beginning again and almost come out and do it all again. And I've had that in a few places, and it really puts you off, because you're like, well, you obviously don't understand transgender issues at all, please go back and read a book, because transgender, sexual orientation, two different things. I don't like people commenting on how well I pass unless I ask them that question, and you know, like, no, yeah, I know I've got a rubbish beard, but it's my beard and I love it, and what makes a man for you might not make a man for somebody else. "Oh, we'll teach you how to be a man," and I'm like, well, I already am, so you can't teach me, I'm the man I am. And if that's an effeminate, camp, gay guy walking down the street, then fine.
I can think of lots of conversations that I've had over time with people who've really struggled to see a trans person in the way that they're asking to be seen, because we think we know what behaviours belong to women, and we think we know what behaviours belong to men, or which ways of looking. And I think it's allowing trans people the right to present themselves in whatever way they want to, and still have whatever gender identity they want to have.
It's quite funny, because I always like to think of myself that somebody made a big mistake when I was born, something went wrong, and it's not a disorder, it's a mistake, and it needs to be rectified, so please rectify it for me. But again, that's language, and some people are quite happy, I suppose, perhaps with gender dysphoria. So again, it's another question of ask the person. It really needs to be a personalised thing.
I think it's really important that you look to the future, that you can see and share a future, you know, share your idea of a future with the person you're supporting, to see that life post-transition can be really positive and fruitful, and something that, you know, that your support through that person's transition has made a huge difference.
When I got up in the morning and looked in the mirror, it wasn't like me, it just didn't feel me. And the minute that I started on the journey and being probably more honest with myself, and then getting the operation, I now, when I get up in the morning, I look in the mirror and I recognise Jan, but also identify with the person that's always been inside me. And I smile, because it's made such a difference to my life. Back at the start, I was very lucky that I had a doctor that understood what I was going to put myself through and how I felt. I don't know what it would have been if I'd got a negative response that night. My journey could have been completely different.
And every time I have to go and see somebody new, it just feels like you're endlessly having to come out, you know, and oh, I'm transgender, by the way, you know, and that just feels really, really difficult when that happens. I hope one day it'll stop. I'm hoping.
For example, if they say, oh, well, I'm not experiencing this, I don't know anything about it, so, you know, you need to go to somebody else. I think that would be a dreadful thing. I'd much prefer them to say, well, I don't know anything about it, I'm not experiencing this, but I'm going to do my very best for you. Let's do this together. That would mean so much to me.
Trust the person you're supporting. Chances are they've done a hell of a lot more reading and thinking and talking about the whole thing than you'll ever manage.
If we can have a look at how we have a unique gender identity ourselves, I think we can start getting close to being there with our clients in their own look at their very unique relationship with their own gender identity.
One of the things that I found helpful and think's important is to support people to get hooked into other community support. When trans folk get the opportunity to spend time in the company of other trans folk and, you know, just general conversation and having a good time, then that's something that gives them, you know, gives folk a real confidence boost and helps them see that they're not the only person and that there's a big wide world out there that includes lots of different trans folk with different ideas and identities.